Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Call to Adventure podcast with me, George B. So I've just got back from the winter mountaineering and summit Aneto course in the French Pyrenees, which was amazing. It was like going to school, but for outdoor skills all day long, kind of 8 to 10 hours of just learning incredibly interesting, awesome, exciting stuff. So we did some ISAC self-arrests, forwards, backwards, head first, face down. We even did one where you start to slide down and then midway through get the axe flung at you and then have to turn around and stop yourself from falling off the side of a mountain, which was really fun. Did a bit of snow science, some avalanche training, made some belays and anchors. So if you want to make that transition from hiking to proper mountaineering and have a chance to summit the highest mountain in the Pyrenees, then this is a great trip. I'll be putting together a video of the trip that we did, so keep your eyes peeled for that if that's of interest. And you can always head over to calltoadventure.uk, take a look at the trips and book on for next year if that floats your boat. But now on to today's pod. So today we're chatting with Nick Hounsfield, otherwise known as Wavemaker Nick. So Nick is a surfer, social entrepreneur. He's the founder and chief visionary officer of The Wave, the first inland surfing destination in Bristol. And he's also a member of the UK Sport International Leadership Programme and a director of Surfing England. So without further ado, Nick, how's it going?
All good. Yeah. What an introduction. And I'm completely intrigued by your trip. So I'm going to have to take that offline and talk about that another time.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was absolutely amazing. It's been cancelled twice because of COVID for the last couple of years. So this was third time lucky. And we were really lucky. The weather was amazing. It snowed just before we got there, so we had lots of snow to play in, but then it was very sunny for the week that we were there and then snowed on the last day. So for the mountain summit day, we had blue skies. And it was great. All the stuff that I'd really wanted to learn, and just like sitting there tying loads of different types of knots and lowering people off massive rocks. So it was a real adventure. It was great fun. Really, really cool. So Nick, before we get into it, we normally do a few quick fire questions. So just first thing that comes into your mind. So favorite surf spots other than the Wave?
It's the only place I surf nowadays. No, it isn't. Favorite surf spot that I can't disclose.
Yeah, that too.
I've got to be a bit careful there. There's somewhere in the Caribbean that is a bit of a jewel in the crown that I had no idea. In fact, just a very quick backstory: broke my shoulder. Spoke to my now wife, thankfully. We need to go away somewhere where there's no waves. So went to the Caribbean for a week's trip so I could rehab my shoulder, and woke up one day to the most perfect, probably 150, 200 meter perfect right-hander just outside our front door. And all I can say is my shoulder very remarkably got better very quickly, because it was perfect. So it's somewhere in the Caribbean, not a million miles away from Trinidad, and absolute perfection. And I'll that spot and that those surfs will live with me till the day I die, 100%.
Wow, very cool. Amazing when you find a spot like that, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
We'll pick that up offline too. Favorite surfer of the moment now? Do you have anyone that's particularly impressing you?
That's a really good question. My favorite surfer at the moment, I have to say, possibly Lucas Skinner. He is an ambassador for us now, but genuinely, he's just such raw talent, so good, and I'm really excited to see the future. I think he really does embody the future of surfing. Good guy, really good kid. Absolutely, obviously, high performance is amazing, but has hopefully and will continue to have a really good head on his shoulders. So he really intrigues me in terms of the future and where it could go and where I think it will go. And then I guess the other person, I've got so many, you can't have, I have to have more than one. I think the other person that I want to shout at is probably Riss Moore. I think she just embodies everything that's really good, everything that comes um, from the surf culture. She's really embodied that really, really well. So obviously she's multiple world champion, but also is humble, smiley, approachable, and I think also there's something earthy about her that really makes me feel like she's an embodiment of surf culture, the true surf culture from Hawaii. So I think that those are the two things, like real homegrown talent, but also somebody who I think will transcend generations.
Yeah, yeah. And is Luke Ben's son?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I met Ben fairly recently down at Skin Dog in Cornwall, and he was just such a nice, down to earth, chilled guy. Just took like half an hour out of his day for me to fanboy his boards and just feel them and go, ooh, they're just amazingly light for boards that big, and really incredible. And then to think that he's surfing at such a high level, but then is really, really chilled out when you meet him, and just feels like somebody that you'd meet down the beach and down the pub.
He's just that whole family's they're just proper humans, like proper humans. They're just good people to be around. Always good vibes around them, and I think are real good ambassadors for the sport. So yeah,
Yeah.
good people.
So how did you get into surfing? What was the genesis of surfing for you?
I got into surfing really probably about 4 or 5 years old. We used to go to Cornwall in the summertime. Most summertimes we go down to Cornwall, normally around Portreath area. My dad was, by his own admission, probably was a pretty terrible surfer, but he will always have a go at everything. And he managed to get hold of an old pop-out board, uh, and yeah, he started to push me. First of all, just got me stood on it. I've got like proper old Super 8 videos of it, pushing me into just along the water's edge, and then later went into the waves with him. And I guess both of us, I had two sisters, and so myself and my dad were always like completely thick as thieves. So we'd always do everything together. I like learnt to sail with him, fish with him, surf with him, play golf with him, and yeah, just I guess he was the first person that got me on a surfboard and pushed me into some waves. So yeah, that's like nearly 45 years ago. So been surfing for 45 years, and I possibly haven't improved since that day.
Wow, that's a very nice connection to have with your dad, though.
Yeah,
It's quite I guess, a fairly unusual thing for people in the UK, just given that not that many people surfed, I think, in their generation. But it's a really, really cool connection. For people that, I mean, a lot of people listening to this will have surfed before, but for those who haven't, can you try and describe what it is that's addictive about surfing, or what the experience feels like?
I guess it's a combination of really like quite hard work. It's quite, it's quite grueling, but in a positive way. It's like when you go for a surf, it feels like you're being bashed around by the elements. It's really good in terms of um, physical exertion, but at the same time you're learning a skill for the first time. It's quite a tricky skill when you first go, go surfing. It feels like almost an impossible task for some people, but actually it's still something that you just repetition you can learn. And I think there's a real quality around surfing about like that tenacity to improve. So you will I always say that every single surfer falls off at the end of the wave. It's just that some people fall off right at the beginning, and some of them have a kind of pretty cool epic ride along the way. But everyone falls over, and I think there's a really good parallel to life in terms of being able to fall over, get back up, fall over, get back up, but just keep progressing, keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. And eventually it just clicks. It just suddenly goes like riding a bike. It suddenly happens. You go, oh, I've done it. And then you might fall over a few more times, and then, oh, I've done it again. And then it just starts to become, one of those learned patterns, which gives you a huge sense of achievement when you're learning. And then I think for a lot of people, and particularly for me, is just getting out into the ocean, being at one with nature, being able to be sometimes thumped around by decent waves, but equally sometimes just having, sometimes it can be really, really quiet and not many waves, and actually being able to be at peace with yourself and be able to be at one with the surroundings and the atmosphere that the ocean creates. So I think it's got different moods, and you can tap into those different moods and respond to them in different ways. You can bring your aggressive side out on it, and other days you could be super chilled and just go, you know what, I just need to be in the water. It's not even about surfing, it's just being in the water. And other times it could be you just loving the fact of the solitude, and other times it's absolutely, you just go, I just need to share this with friends. So it's just those different moods and personalities of water, waves, ocean, and how you can integrate how you feel yourself into that environment. So I kind of love it, not surprisingly. It's like, and fundamentally, and for obviously many years, have felt like it's something that could really share with people who maybe don't have experience of it, don't understand it, don't have access to it, for various reasons. And it just feels like there's something in surfing that is could transcend just it being purely a sport. It could be something that could be part of your own health and well-being. So that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, yeah, I think about it in a very similar way, and I think it does have a lot of parallels to mountaineering, actually, and the variability of that, where it's kind of like more than a sport. If you want to be like very romantic about mountaineering, it's really like a kind of communion with nature, and you can have lots of different experiences. I think like you can in surfing. Like I've had some of the most serene, beautiful, laid back times of my life on a surfboard, sitting in Central America and Panama and Boca del Toro, and just kind of lying on your board and just sitting in the sunshine, not even really surfing, and just really relaxing and enjoying the moment, all the way to some of the most terrifying moments of my life. Even just recently down in Devon, caught in some big swell, and it was nearly game over, and my leash snapped, and I was stuck out there and having a real big day, let's say, and then got back to shore, wondering whether I would do after about 45 minutes of pretty extreme paddling back in. And it was, but the lessons that you learn, I think are kind of similar to that mountaineering stuff, where you can apply the things that happen in your surfing to the rest of your life. Like then I was probably a little bit gung-ho going out, and I wasn't really aware of my surroundings. I was just kind of like not very present and not really looking up, watching the conditions. And then the surf had got a lot bigger over the 20 minutes or something that I'd been, maybe half an hour that I'd been in there. And then I was out back and it was absolutely massive. And then I came back and then I didn't surf for a little while, but it really stayed with me, that lesson, as it has sometimes when I've pushed it a little bit too far, when I've been doing some kind of alpine hiking or Himalayan stuff. So it makes these sports quite different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think a big part of that is that interaction with nature, where you can come prepared as much, you can have, and obviously the more knowledge you have, you're going to just become safer. But ultimately, you still do throw yourself out there a little bit to the behest of nature, and you have to just deal with what's going to get served up to you. And I love that. And what's interesting is obviously, with the wave having created a very artificial environment where you can actually control a lot of those kind of things, is it does take a little bit of that that fear and worry around that. So I think it's particularly good for people who want to sort of venture into that field, but feel like they're quite scared or concerned, or want more direction, or want to dispel a little bit of the cultural bound feeling like I'm entering into something that I don't know much about. I feel a little bit intimidated by, because I think surfing is intimidating, in terms of looking at waves and the ocean and all the rest of it, but also I think it can be, or has been up until now, quite an intimidating sport to get into, because it's set by a culture and a code and the way that people should be in the water, and I think I quite like the fact that we are actually reducing down some of that tension, and making it more acceptable for a greater number of people, but also being able to be stewards of that dialogue, making sure that when people do learn to surf, and then we do go down to the ocean, that actually there's respect there, respect for the ocean, respect for people who are already in the lineup, respect for the ocean surroundings, the marine environment, respect for making sure that the beaches are cleaned and that you're not leaving any footprints of you being there, all those kind of things. So it comes with that sort of democratizing of surfing, with, I think, a responsibility to also make sure that when people do surf and go down to the beaches, that actually they're better surfers, not just from a technical point of view, but also from a human point of view, in their, they've got the right outlook and tried to be part of that conversation. I think it's really important.
Yeah. I love the wave, and I think most people will know what it is by now. But for those who don't, you would do a much better job than I will, Nick. But just very quickly, it's a kind of man-made inland surfing venue, with in fact, you will do a much better job. So just very quickly, what is the wave?
I would challenge that, and I'd only challenge that over the last few days. I've been really, really thinking about what we are, and I still don't think we know what we are. I don't think we know what the potential of what we are is, but I would say we are a health and well-being destination place that you could come and visit, that has got surfing at the heart of it, but is also creates a place, a culture, a vibe that it's just a place of hope right now. I think it's just a place of hope. That might seem a little bit airy fairy, a bit woolly, but I think right now, I think a lot of people people I've spoken to today, it's a place of hope. So people that come along, they have fun, they laugh, they're smiling, they're reflective, and they're also at the same time becoming better surfers. But it is quintessentially, as you say, an inland surf destination that creates perfect waves at the push of a button, and it deals up waves for people of all ages, all backgrounds, and all abilities. That's what we are.
Yeah, I think about Call to Adventure and the adventure stuff very similarly, where the medium is much less important than the experience and the message and the learning that you take from it. So yeah, we basically sell adventure tours and give out free adventure advice. But the reason why is because of all the things that you get from adventure, which is like the joy of being outdoors, connecting with others, challenging yourself. And then it's really a great way to Trojan horse in the message of sustainability, help people fall in love with the outdoors. But it's far more interesting and compelling than doing talks about climate change and biodiversity loss and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. So it's a very real way to communicate those messages and get people to form those relationships and really care about those things firsthand in a way that a lecture can't.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and as exactly what you just said, it goes back to the reason why you're doing it, what your purpose is in terms of why you set up anything. It doesn't matter what it is, but if it's actually founded upon, you know, strong principles of clear purpose of what you want to achieve, then, yeah, from my perspective, it that will give it the longevity of, whatever I'm doing, what you're doing, what anybody's doing. It means that you've got a far more coherent message to be able to promote or advertise, market, or the impact that you want to see in this world. Fundamentally, we just want people to have massive amounts of good fun in a safe environment and protect the planet whilst we're doing it.
Mm.
It's simple as that, I think. But I
Yeah.
think that's the common thread between what we're all doing, because we just absolutely love what we do. We want to share it, but we want to make sure that we're sharing it in a responsible way.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I I think that's all amazing, and I completely agree. But it's also a great venue just to learn to surf and to get better at surfing. So if I think surfing is probably one of the hardest, if not the hardest, sport that I've ever tried to learn. It takes such a long time, and that's kind of what makes it amazing because it just takes forever to chip away at. I live in landlocked Shropshire, so it's pretty much the worst place to be a surfer, right in the middle of the country. So it's 3 hours to get to the sea. And we would often drive there, and then the surf was supposed to be good. And then you get there, and it's either too big or too small or really busy. And then for this day that you'd driven, the 6.5 hour return round trip, you would maybe get 4 or 5 opportunities to stand up on a wave. You'd miss two, and then you'd fall off on the others, and then you'd come home. And it would
Yeah,
just take forever. And I loved the being in the sea. There's kind of nothing better than it in a lot of ways, and it was good enough just to have a day out with your mates. But what I
yeah,
love about the wave is that it takes away so many of those variables. You're not tired
yeah,
when you paddle out. It's the
yeah,
same wave each time. You don't feel the pressure of everybody else being like you're getting their wave. And it's
yeah,
really it's kind of opened up actual surfing for me because I've caught my first proper waves there and experienced the feeling of surfing and like actually surfing along a wave and being like, oh, this is why everybody loves it so much.
yeah,
Like,
exactly,
it's cool
exactly.
being out there, but now I can actually surf. And so if people are listening and thinking like, well, I'm much, I've only surfed in the sea, I'm not really sure about this kind of approach, I would strongly encourage you just to have a go, because and the different settings mean that it's fun for everyone. We go with people who've never been before to guys who are really good and they go on their expert wave, and it's certainly pretty heavy now. But I think it's just it's an amazing concept, and I was so happy when you guys built it here. Yeah, pumped with it.
Yeah. Good. I'm so glad that you've enjoyed it so much. I mean, it is. I still pinch myself every time. Really, today was just, first of all, wanted to just get in the water, but of course that's my workplace, so I've got to kind of do some work. Um, but seeing people with smiles on their faces, just and you can see that sort of concentration and people really really wanting to crack that as a skill, and then the look on their face when they nail it and they're like standing up, and and everyone cheering around them, not in a cheesy way, but again, when you go down to the beaches, it's all a little bit kind of, you don't. I mean, I do, but a lot of people just kind of have got their game face on when they're out there.
Too cool for
Um,
school.
yeah, exactly. But what we really want to do at the Wave, and we do at the Wave, is just try to just take that stress out of it. It's like, smile, like whoop each other into waves. Uh, just be excited for other people's success. it's so important. And also being able to just go, actually, you can go on this. There's so many waves in an hour. You go on this wave. I'll just get the next one. It's fine. It's all cool. It's no problem. You very rarely get that at the sea. So and that's something that we, thankfully, with our Wavemakers, all the people that work with us, we call everybody who works with us Wavemakers. It comes really naturally to them, and in terms of creating the right vibe, make it very accepting for anybody. So nobody should be coming to us and feeling embarrassed or ashamed or intimidated or anything like that. We want to really break down that the ability for people to feel welcome and that they can just feel like it's their own home break, their own place.
Yeah, I'm pumped now. Looking forward to going again soon. But just to switch gears a little bit, so what is Blue Health? I read that that's a passion and something that you're very interested in. But what is Blue Health?
Blue Health is a concept, it's a paradigm of looking at the benefits from a physical and mental perspective of being in, around, close to, listening to, visualizing water, waves, the ocean, and how that has a nourishing effect on people's health and well-being. So whether you're actually in the water, swimming or surfing or sailing, could be fishing, could be anything like that, but being in and around water feels, and something I've felt for years, feels like it nourishes my health and well-being. And obviously, if you're active in it, then that gives another layer of being able to be physical and kind of getting your body, moving, maybe also being submerged in water, just being able to take gravity out of the equation of what it does to your body, from your joints and your musculoskeletal system, and fundamentally that it's just a very, very positive experience. And Blue Health is a sort of growing body of research of being starting to understand how actually that could be a real panacea, like a medicine chest in the ocean or in water or in lakes or in rivers or at the wave, whereby people walk away from it and go, I feel better for having done that, either being close to it or actually being in it. And what we're wanting to work out is we'll get a lot more research off the back of how does that happen? What happens? What happens to your neurology? What happens to your brain in that blue environment when you can hear water or the sound of waves or being in water? How does that manifest itself in actually in your body? And can we actually get some research around that? Because we work with 4 or 5 different organizations whereby these organizations are coming to us, getting basically surf therapy coming along, and people who, and mainly kids, but also could be adults, people who come to us are having such a positive experience that they go back and can focus more, be better people, maybe reduce their medication, deal with addiction or loads of different things. They're just better people for it. And if we can bottle that up or understand what that is, then that would be so much better than having to take medicine or having, it has to be in combination for some people with counseling or medication or whatever it might be. But if we can reduce that down and it becomes your way of being able to self-prescribe, be able to go, you know what, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to reduce the amount that I do that, but I'm actually just going to go out into the nature. And you know what, I'm just going to go and have a walk by a stream, or I'm going to go to a lake, or I'm going to go surfing, or I'm going to go to the wave, or I'm going to go swimming, whatever it is. There's something in that is completely recognizable across loads of people, and we just want to look at how we can get evidence base around that, so that we can potentially, create surf therapy, not just for the wave, in the oceans or in streams or rivers or wherever it might be. So that's a whole body of research that is out there already, and we then go, well, wait a second, we're going to have maybe 100,000 people visiting the wave. That is the most perfect cohort to then be able to go, let's get some research off that, because that's kind of cool. If we can get a body of research off the back of that, proving how important that is for people's mental and physical well-being, then that for us is gold dust in terms of showing how the impact that you can have on this world, particularly if you can then reach out to people who don't have access to that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Like if you've spent a lot of time around water, or even if you haven't, just I think most people intuitively have experienced that, right? They felt the kind of benefits of being around water. They've just felt, yeah, I do feel really good. I feel kind of more relaxed, and all the other good stuff that goes along with it. But it's interesting now how we're able to use the scientific method and research to actually find the mechanism behind why these things happen. But it's funny how things that, even though we're like so technologically advanced, and we have Starlink going around and neural networks and all this, and an incredibly fast internet system, and yet some of the things that are the most powerful are things that people have done for thousands or millions of years. Like the sauna is a really good example. I was living in Sweden until last year, and they didn't know the mechanism behind why saunas were really good for you. But now the science has been able to find all of these, the actual specific mechanisms of why it makes you feel so good. And I think that's encouraged a lot more people to get back into it. But it's fascinating how we kind of deep down, we know these kind of things, but we often need the science to bring us back round to things that we kind of have forgotten or perhaps knew in the first place.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And fundamentally, when push comes to shove, I mean, as we know, through the back of a pandemic, where we instinctively know what makes us feel good, and when it's taken away from us, we really notice it. We really, really notice it, and that could be human connection. It could be getting out into nature. It could be just going for a walk, even being able to go into your back garden that sometimes felt like it was like really daring. So suddenly when that world is opened back up to you, it feels like, personally, really grateful, much more grateful than I ever was before. And I was pretty grateful anyway. But then it feels like we just got to share this. We've got to allow other people access to those spaces, to those green spaces, blue spaces, nature, and particularly, living pretty close to the centre of Bristol, and we're going to be going into London. Those spaces are, there aren't so many of them, and so we need to work hard to be able to get people who potentially are missing out on that out into them. So your call to adventure, because, and same with me, relatively privileged, we've managed to get out there and make that happen because we realize how important it is, and we love it. Wouldn't it be great if more people who would never even think about them being in that space, to be able to then have access to that as well? And that really excites me for the future. If again we can start to sort of that democratizing of nature, and be able to go, right, how can we get more people out there, loving and living this space that we appreciate, and know instinctively it's really good for us as humans.
Yeah, I was talking to Alex Staniforth on the show a little while ago, and he referred to the outdoors as the natural health service. And I love that way of thinking about it, and really helps frame how powerful the outdoors can be.
Yeah,
Well, it'd be interesting I'd love to keep an eye on that research and kind of see what they come up with, because it's I think it's fascinating.
yeah.
And I'd love to talk a little bit about the kind of adaptive and parasurfing stuff that you have also delved into. So what sparked your interest in those fields?
I guess it goes back to, that accessibility. Seeing. So I got introduced to the adaptive scene in 2016, I think it was, mainly 2015 maybe. I became aware that there was a sort of growing field of surfers who were just sending it like you would never believe, in decent waves, big waves, but also always with a smile on their face and incredible characters. I was introduced by this guy called Nick Rees, who was working with Surfing England. It was Surfing GB at that time, and then we morphed into Surfing England, and just went to the World Adaptive Games in San Diego and met two or three of the characters from the England setup, but more importantly, the wider community of adaptive surfers, and found that they were some of the most funny, the most inappropriate in a funny way, just heartfelt, incredible human beings I'd ever met, and in a rich pool of talent as well. I was like, wow, they just completely blew me away. And I said, if I'm going to be building the wave, it would be an absolute travesty if we didn't design it for not just disability compliant, but absolutely the most accessible place that we could possibly create. So making sure that the entire building design, the way you get into the lake, the stuff that we've got, the equipment we've got to be able to be hired or used or what have you, just like everything was thought through properly with an adaptive surfing mindset. So we obviously set about doing that, and some of the if you look closely at some of the things that we've done at the Wave, that is because we've made them not just disability compliant, but like really adaptive friendly. And then over time, a lot of these guys became really good friends, and it's become a scene that I would live in if I possibly could, because I think that when you realize that there's people out there who've got every single excuse under the sun to not be able to, for some of them, not even to be living anymore, like really have gone through massive hardship to still be alive, let alone go surfing, and let alone learn to surf, and let alone compete, and let alone become medal winners in their field. You just go like, okay, you literally fire the excuses of people who then say, oh, I can't do it, it's a bit cold, or I've got an ingrained toenail, and or whatever it might be, just any excuses of why they won't want to do it. If that adaptive community could become our ambassadors as to absolutely why you should be doing something, I just really dig the thought of that. And not only is that community, they've embraced me, but also I think that it's the way of the future in terms of being able to show surfing in its truest form. The stoke of those guys is like astronomical, and they bring a lot of joy and a lot of happiness into that surfing community, and it's something that I think we need to be sharing across the whole surfing community and then way beyond that. So that's why we've hosted 2 or 3 times already, and we're going to continue to do it. The surfing England adaptive games. Obviously, we've done 2 at the Wave. We're going to continue to do that because I just think it's like the most perfect melting pot of everything that is so brilliant about surfing that can flow over into society. I'm quite passionate about it, you might have noticed.
Super
Yeah.
inspiring. It's really, really
Yeah,
cool to hear. And I think anything like that really just ignites a rocket under your bum, right? It makes you just
that's
feel it's
exactly it.
very, very energizing. And when you're around that kind of energy and enthusiasm and strength and resilience, it really helps push you forward, right? It's very
Yeah,
infectious.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And and getting in amongst that crew at a time when, to get the wave built, it has been really tough at times. But then you look at the stuff that they've had to overcome. It's like, well, yeah, it pales. It just puts perspective on stuff. It just puts perspective on your life, and you're like, well, my woes about not being able to do this, do that in work life and all the rest of it. Yeah, I'm not having to deal with the stuff that they have to deal with day
Mm.
in, day out. So just like, get a grip, go again tomorrow. It's all going to be fine. And I think that that whole community taught me about resilience. 100% puts perspective on stuff,
Yeah.
and continue to. So it's great. Really, really good scene to be involved in, and the fact that we could potentially get it to the Paralympics, whereby obviously that creates a real these characters who are in that adaptive scene, parasurfing scene, should be they're leaders, they're people that could inspire generations and millions of people, and they just need to have a voice now. So yeah, I just really dig the thought of getting that community out there on a global stage and be able to show how amazing they are as athletes, but also how amazing they are as humans.
Yeah, have to have a few of them on the podcast. This podcast used to be called We Need More Heroes. And the idea was that we should be admonishing different types of people in society instead of kind of influencers and Kardashians. We should look to people who are genuinely inspiring, kind of doing amazing things in life. So,
Yeah, I could hook you up with the most incredible people. So yeah,
yeah,
let's have
yeah,
a chat about that.
that would be brilliant. Yeah, I'd really enjoy that. I read that back in 2020, you actually had a stroke yourself, or a series of strokes. Which my dad had a stroke a few years ago, so it's something that I'm very familiar with. But do you feel like your exposure to those guys helped you in your own recovery?
They kind of take the mickey out of me a bit. They were like, just say a lot of those guys say, well, you love us so much, you're actually wanting to try and become one of us. Like, I mean, like, what disability are you wanting to, like, you just want to compete with us, you just want to get into the adaptive team. Yeah, I had a big stroke in 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. Luckily, I wasn't massively physically affected, but I lost all ability to speak. So I had to kind of relearn how to speak all over again. But yeah, the guys from the team were the first people to just send messages of support. They know what it's like to have a life-changing condition or life-changing event that you've got to come back from. And again, you look at perspective, like, it's very easy to then go, what have I lost? But actually, what have I still got became the more important thing. And I've got a couple of friends who I've met through the adaptive scene, who they've had strokes and are they have got proper lifelong physical, cognitive, mental, and speech issues. And I the first time I saw one of them at the Wave, I absolutely burst out in tears. I almost feel teary now thinking about it, because I just go, he that happened to him ages ago, and already I had made a better recovery from him, and I felt embarrassed, really, that I'd made such a good recovery. I'm very, very blessed, of course, but just went, just like the perspective that creates, just go, it could have been so much worse. Could have been so much worse. So I think that was incredibly important to put perspective on how it was bad at the time, but equally I was very lucky that it wasn't worse. And that's, something that just still wrestles with me day in, day out. But fundamentally, I am still really lucky rather than a victim.
Do you have any other advice for people that have been through something similar or are dealing with adversity themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's just being kind to yourself, really. I mean, I make no bones about the fact that it has been massively, from a mental health point of view, it really is troublesome going through stuff like that. Obviously, lots of people go through a lot worse, but I think often there's a real feeling of need to get back to where you were before. And I think that you need to, for some people, they have to get to that point where they realize that they maybe will never get back to where they were before, and need to kind of learn how to change their lives accordingly. But also just being kind to yourself, because you end up really beating yourself up by wanting to be better, like pushing yourself to, repair yourself, rehabilitate yourself, all those kind of things. And that actually creates more stress than the actual issue or injury or whatever it might be, or disability itself. So it's just, I guess, about being kind to yourself, and not beating yourself up with why you've got there. It will get better in some shape or form, but it's not a race. Recovery is not a race, and actually, sometimes racing yourself might be the very reason why you got it in the first place. You just need to step back, get perspective, and be kind to yourself.
In terms of after you had the stroke, was there anything surprising that happened afterwards?
I mean, there was a bit of an irony, I guess, that what I'd ended up with my team building at the Wave actually ended up being my own medicine, in terms of getting into the water. It was during pandemic. As soon as I was able to get to the Wave, it was all shut down, so it was just there by myself, scrubbing the lake, because I was really annoyed that algae was starting to pop up around the place. So I just got a scrubbing brush and spent best part of 2-3 months scrubbing the lake bed. But actually, how being in water and around water and seeing waves, I pushed waves to be able to just sort of churn it all up once I'd sort of disturbed the algae and stuff like that. And how actually it became my own medicine chest. That was a real surprise, and a real irony, that I'd kind of maybe something that had pushed me over the edge in terms of getting the stroke. Maybe I don't know why I got a stroke, but maybe 10 years of really pushing myself too hard to get this place built, and then having a stroke, then ironically became the place where I could heal again. And that was a surprise. That was definitely a surprise, but a nice surprise. And then it means that now I can talk to people with real authority around the healing power of being in and around water, and again, then wanting to just share that as widely as possible.
Yeah. Well, really powerful. Thanks for sharing, Nick. Just to close, what do you think of the state of British surfing now?
Oh man, just to close, that's a whole different episode. That is a whole different episode. I would say there is massive potential. I think there is some. We've got the people. We've got the people that can deliver this. That can deliver an amazing organization based around British surfing that will then be able to pump prime the money that we know is now available because it's part of Olympic surfing. And we just need to all be grown up about it, set up a sustainable future, so that this raw young talent that absolutely exists, because I've seen some of them even today, I've seen them there, that we can absolutely tap into that raw talent and put them on the pedestal that they deserve to be on. Whether that happens in the next 3 months, 3 years, now's the time to be doing it. And the opportunity has never been riper right now. I'm glad to be a part of those conversations, although I'm not. I've stepped away from British surfing to some degree. I'm still chairman of Surfing England, but I can just see this raw, untapped potential, both in our athletes and both in the organisation of it. And it's just got to kind of work its way into being a real force, which I'm really confident that we can do it. It's just getting the right people around the right tables to be able to support the right people at the right time. And right now, I can see particularly some of the youth coming through, and I'm really, really excited about it. And it's up to us to be able to create that sustainable future. So I am very, very excited about it. But we've got a lot of work to do still as well.
Well, there we go, peeps. Very inspiring to finish. Time to get out and do some surfing. If you really want to give surfing a go and you perhaps are a little bit apprehensive, the Wave is a great place to give it a go, as is the sea. But I highly recommend that you go and check it out. It is brilliant. It's such a very, very good vibes and just amazing, good fun. So, Nick, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time. It's been awesome to chat.
Thank you.
It's been really, really great. And listeners and watchers and viewers, thanks very much for tuning in as always. So until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.